beginning the EAC meeting. All right, so this is the EAC meeting for Village of Ossining on July 2nd, 2024. Kate Schlott, chairperson present. Nick?
Nick Tedrow, councilperson present.
Katie Alberti, councilperson present. Or Catherine, either way.
Nicholas, either way, also.
I'm just Kate, so.
Oh.
So Danielle, we are going over the tree ordinance, the tree preservation law. We were expecting a visit with the village arborist, Jean Zimmerman, but I'm not sure if she is going to make it tonight. I know that Katie had a couple of issues that she wanted to bring up. So Katie, what was I think now is a great opportunity since it's the four of us.
Great. So it was section 248-14G 2 and 3. So the
You said 248 what?
the permit procedures. And I couldn't tell you what page it's on.
Okay.
Sorry.
248-14.
Yeah, permit procedures. And then if you scroll down to the revised area section and come to paragraph G.
Okay.
Because everything else made a lot of sense. My quibble is perhaps with the grammar or the it might be clearer if we move some of the words around, but I'm sure who drafted this may have had a reason for it. So what it says is the physical condition of the trees proposed for, let me read the preamble. Determination by approval authority in making its determination to grant with conditions or deny a tree removal permit under this chapter. The factors to be considered by the approval authority shall include, but shall not necessarily be limited to, the following. So under item paragraphs parentheses 2, the physical condition of the tree proposed for removal, species size and health shall be identified with regard to the relative value of preservation. Very minor quibble. I think it would be clear if you moved species size and health after the word tree. But I wouldn't, not going to throw myself on the ground and kick my heels about this. The physical to read the physical condition of the tree, parentheses, species size and health proposed for removal shall be identified with regard to the relative value of preservation. Or something like that.
I think it should even go after physical condition, actually, because that's what you're referring or describing there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mark up my thing or, well, anyway, so the next item, the effect of disturbance on the existing trees by accepted forest management practices, including the effect on ecological systems, erosion and sedimentation potential.
Katie, you're muted. Your sound went out.
That's you, Kate. I heard her fine.
You're actually not muted. I don't know if your sound is working.
It's you.
Nick, am I muted? We're all muted.
We can know.
We're all muted.
I can hear
you.
everyone
Hear me?
Fine.
We can hear you.
Okay. Katie, I don't hear you.
We hear Katie.
I don't hear you, Nick.
We all hear each other.
I don't hear Danielle.
Oh no.
Check your earphones.
I'm going to come back. I'm going to sign back in.
There you go. Well, I was going to stop the recording. Oh, no, it looks okay.
No, I think I'm recording, so we're good.
Oh, okay.
I just got an email from Jean, and she's trying to get in, so I'm going to try to get her in real quick.
So maybe I should hold this.
Maybe she joined the agenda on the website.
Yeah, and sometimes I have to remind Jamie to update the link. Let's see.
Hello. Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Hi, Kate. Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh wow. We can
There's
Show
no chat.
captions.
Oh,
Show
no.
captions.
Jean is actually trying to get into the call. I'm gonna forward her the link and I'm gonna try to sign back in as well. All right, so I will be back.
I was gonna tell her I just forwarded the link, but I guess she can't hear me, so.
Hey, wait,
Wow. That's so strange.
I guess she can turn on the captions and then she can.
See you? Thank you,
Sorry.
Danielle.
Thank you, thank you. Glad to be here, thank you.
All right, so we were just discussing parts of the tree ordinance, just some last minute things here and there that we might want to reword. We would love to hear your thoughts on what you thought of the ordinance, if there are things that stuck out to you, things that we should probably consider redoing, or what your thoughts are, just in general. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, well, first of all, let me say that you guys have done an incredible job. It's just absolutely clear how much work you've put and care you've put into it, and I'm just really impressed. I know that's probably one of the most difficult things any municipality can do is put together a tree ordinance, so kudos to you. So it looks great. I did have a few questions about it. If I don't know whether you're going over it in order or how you're doing it. Sorry.
At this point, we've discussed it quite extensively over the last few months. So if there's something in particular that you want to
Yeah.
highlight, this is your floor for the evening.
Okay. All right. So I just had a few questions, I guess. First of all, the issue of the tree bank. I think that the idea of paying into a tree fund is fantastic. And in my experience in Austining, going around and weighing in on people's removals in their yards, it's clear so often that there is not space for somebody to plant a replacement tree, even if we were advising that. And so for that purpose, in the eventuality that we think that it should be up to the homeowner to replace a tree, but that is not possible in their yard, I think that is just a great idea. And it's been done in other municipalities successfully. But I wasn't quite sure when you were talking about an actual tree bank being a piece of land with trees. Maybe you can explain it to me. I didn't really understand how that would work.
I think the idea was that on certain village-owned properties that had the size available to it, that it could be a potential place to plant trees, because we know that overall we're very limited on where we
Right.
actually can realistically put a tree if we're going to put something new. And
Right.
taking into consideration what you're saying about property owners and the space that they might have available,
Yes.
we were looking at the potential, if it's possible, to look into other lots where we could potentially put it in place of
Mhm.
necessarily doing it on a private property, as long as it's going somewhere within the village to help offset what was removed.
Yeah, to replace canopy, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I just wasn't sure whether you're planning to keep trees there so that they would be removed and planted elsewhere. I just didn't get it. So that's good. I have a question also about, so when you talk about activities that are permitted without a permit, and one of them was removal of invasive species, if recommended by a tree specialist. So this is something that maybe is just a pet peeve of mine, but what I find, and I'm the chair of the tree board in Hastings as well. What I find is that tree companies these days are all too willing to visit a homeowner's property and say, that Norway maple is invasive. It has to go. And, you know, they want to charge $4,000 to take it down. And I find that people they don't know very much about trees, and they're all too willing. People are rather gullible. And in my opinion, I think that even a Norway maple on somebody's yard provides canopy and shade and, you know, health-giving oxygen. And I don't know that that is necessarily a standard that you want to include in your tree ordinance. And especially when you say, if it's over the signature of a tree specialist. Having worked at tree companies, I am a little bit wary of that. So something to keep in mind, maybe.
Just
Is
taking
it
some
worth-
notes as well, sir. Yes,
What
please.
that-
Is it worth discussing why, what prompted including that activity in the activities permitted without a tree permit? Because I can see what the very strong argument you're making, Jean, for some maybe having oversight of it. Would that be a more appropriate thing?
I don't know the full reason why we went in that direction. But I know that some of it was done with the understanding of how certain invasive species are also helping other invasive species to thrive. So I think one of the main issues was like tree of heaven and things that are of that nature that's helping to spread other invasive species like spotted lanternfly and emerald ash borer, and even the arguments behind how we're dealing with that overall have been subject to a lot of questions. So it might be a bit of an overreach in terms of like what we expect people to do, but I don't know if a lot of people really are going to go out of their way to openly remove an invasive species unless it really is causing some sort of a problem.
Well, an ordinary person might not, but
Yeah.
say Bartlett or Save a Tree or whoever, they're prowling the neighborhood and they're going over to somebody's house and they're saying, you don't really need that tree, you know, you don't need that Norway maple, and it's invasive. This does happen quite a bit. So I would just be
Okay.
wary of that. And in terms of tree of heaven, yeah, absolutely. There is less reason to retain trees like that. But I guess my feeling is that the definition of invasives is something that's always changing. And I don't think you want to make it so that somebody says, this Japanese tree lilac in my yard is inconvenient to me. And by the way, it's invasive. We can just take it out. I don't think you want to go there, really. I mean, I personally feel like, I guess I believe that everything warrants approval before
Yeah.
removal. That's what I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the argument also with the invasive species is that if we, the village, are allowing certain invasive species to exist on properties as part of ornamental devices, it's really hard to push private owners to adopt a rule that requires them to remove invasive species or, you know,
Yeah.
so it's
It's
maybe the wording. Yeah, so I think that's a good point. What you're
yeah,
is.
I guess what I'm saying is it could lead to this kind of Wild West mentality where in certain circumstances, anything goes. And I don't think that you want to encourage that.
okay.
You know, if we require that other removals have to be approved, why not those as well? I don't think there's any reason not to, really. Again, you know, in the case of Hastings,
Mhm.
we have oversight even over Atlantis, you know, everything. We need to approve everything before it's removed. And I don't think there's any problem with that. And I had a question actually sort of related somewhat to that. So the question of tree removals being approved by the village, I can say as the tree warden, this has been something that's been a little bit of a puzzlement to me, because what I've been advised, and perhaps I'm mistaken about this or misunderstanding it, is that it's pretty much accepted that when somebody wants to remove a tree, we recommend that. And I haven't had a whole lot of encouragement when I say, no, that tree should be retained. So I don't know whether this ordinance is going to have more teeth as far as that's concerned.
But it all does come down to the building inspector and the building department. How strictly they want to make this, you know, complied with.
Right. So, and what I've been advised, just between us, is that, again, it's, I don't want to say that it's check in the box, but I have not been encouraged to say, no, this tree is in perfectly good shape. We want to retain this. So I think we need to have more teeth there as far as I'm concerned. Or else what's the point, you know,
Yeah,
honestly.
Mhm.
And the one further thing, so that's just something to mull over. I just didn't understand when the ordinance talked about stumps being removed, and I didn't think I understood that properly, that that you wanted to say that in every single case, a stump of a tree being removed, the stump needs to be ground or not, because as it is now, again, when I'm weighing in on trees being removed on private property, there's an option of yeah, possibly they need to be ground, possibly the stump can remain, possibly we have no mandate about the stump. And I think all of those situations have merit according to the, you know, the given placement of the tree, whether, you know, in other words, if you're looking at the back of somebody's property and there's a row of trees and it doesn't, they're not affected by anything, they're not, there's no impact to those stumps on anything. Personally, I don't care, leave the stumps, it doesn't matter to me, right? And so I might have misunderstood what you were saying there.
it really does seem to say that without exception need to be
Ground.
removed and ground.
Yeah. And so maybe there was some reasoning about that I didn't understand.
I don't know if there was any particular reason that we did is, Danielle, was there something, I think that was also why we wanted to have you look at it too.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
there were some things that when we were going over it initially, we weren't sure whether it was too much, not enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were going about it in the right way. So this is
Yeah,
all
okay.
great feedback to
Okay.
hear from you, because
Okay.
this is all things that we
Okay.
can
Yeah.
mull over again and make it better.
Yeah, I just think that that's something in terms of stump removal that it varies according to the situation, and
Just like site dependent, really. And
it is, that's exactly right, it's site dependent. And you know, we might want to advise, I mean, you're talking about a tree ordinance that does, I'm speaking about private property, and this ordinance covers everything. So there might be, on public lands, you might want to have a more uniform policy. But in terms of private property, I think it depends again on the site. So,
There typically much greater cost for that work added to the project for the stump removal.
yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. So stump grinding and removal is quite expensive. And not
Okay.
only that, to be able to get the equipment in to do it is not always possible. So,
Mhm. That's
yeah,
another good reason to not overburden
Yeah.
people with cost if
Right.
it's not necessary. Okay.
right, right.
This one was actually existing language
Oh, was it?
in the
Oh,
ordinance. I think we only changed a couple words in the first sentence or so, but I totally agree with what you're saying that it should be
Uh-huh.
site dependent.
Uh-huh.
But again, I don't know the reasoning why they had this there in the first place.
Okay.
So
I'm not 100% familiar with the town ordinance, I'm more familiar with the village ordinance than I am the town, so it could be something that perhaps was more in line with what the town was doing.
Right.
Again, not 100% sure, I would have to double check. But if you think doing something that is more site dependent on private property makes more sense, then I think that's something that we should consider it updating.
I think so. And also even perhaps not just on private property. I mean, I think it should be perhaps taken under advisement depending on the land that you're looking at and the site and whether it's even possible to get equipment into a given, say it's a wooded tract, right? And say there is a tree that it's hazardous and needs to come down. That doesn't necessarily mean that the stump needs to be removed. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way we can establish a criteria in that?
I think it does require evaluating it on a case basis, I would say.
And this would be something that when an arborist is coming out when we're going through the permitting process, that would they be able to answer this during that time? Or
Yeah.
would this okay, so then maybe that's something that as,
I mean, like when I'm going out and looking at it, yeah, absolutely.
Tree warden, maybe at the discretion of the tree warden. something
Yeah.
like that.
yeah.
And that's the way it is now, actually.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
good to
maybe we
provide people examples so they have an idea, just besides this person comes in,
Yeah,
gives me an arbitrary decision or
Yeah.
something, which obviously we wouldn't say that, but that would, an angry homeowner might be like, well, this isn't very clear.
Yeah. I mean, part of it, I think, if you just want to be sort of judicious about it, in my shoes, when I go to somebody's property, I don't want to, they're already paying to be able to remove this tree. I don't see why they need to pay in addition to remove the stump if it's really not warranted, right?
Mhm.
well, let me ask even the more probable bit, is there any situation where it would be harmful to the public to leave a stump?
I can think of one. Because I did have this
Yeah.
problem.
Okay.
When I bought my house, was termites. We used to have a stump at the very head of our driveway from a tree that was removed just before we bought the house. And about a year later, termites got in and ate the stump away within a matter of almost a week and a half.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah,
And-
but that's really the only thing that I can think of, and a solution to that was to get termite traps, and it's done the job ever since.
Right, and another reason would be if you want to do replanting in a site.
Mhm.
And then you do need to, and if you want to encourage that, you do want to remove the stump, say, from either from somebody's property or from from a tree lawn or, something like that.
So then maybe we can have language that indicates that specifically, because there are some situations where replanting on a property will be possible, And then maybe the language can just reflect that if you are replanting in that site, you need to remove the stump.
Right, that
And-
would be good. I think that would be good.
But it seems like, yeah, the cost-effective choice for people 9 times out of 10 is gonna be like contributing to the tree bank or whatever, rather than removing the tree and replacing it, but
Right,
there's a little decent.
probably, yeah. So that's the extent of my suggestions. Did you have any questions for me about anything?
I'd like to circle back to the first set of things you were bringing up, if we could, just for a second, so I make sure I understand everything you're saying about activities without permit. So just to kind of summarize the concerns on the invasive species part, one, it sounds like from your perspective, there's a lot of predatory business practices that could center around that if folks target in on a municipality like, well, if we were to adopt it like this, would have a kind of a blanket policy that homeowners might get taken for a ride potentially.
Yes,
And, it could also, I guess, present as a loophole for homeowners who just want to get rid of a tree but not go through a permit process to just.
totally.
Um,
No exaggeration. You're absolutely right. Predatory, for sure.
Okay, and then I just, were you saying, it's kind of sound like at least you were perhaps insinuating that it's better to not have conditions for unpermitted removals altogether, maybe, or
I'm
is
not
that
sure I
kind of what you were getting
understand
at, like,
what
it's
you're
just always
saying.
Nick, there are a number of other, if you're looking at that paragraph, a number of other conditions that make a whole lot of sense, like under emergency situations.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
if you look at that whole paragraph, there's a number of different
Oh, yeah, I know.
situations.
I just wanted to, I guess, get the full scope of if it was just kind of isolated to this particular instance, or if there's a broader benefit to being more stringent or
Right.
focused on what the unpermitted activities are.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, yeah, I tend to be a little cynical and suspicious of tree companies, but that doesn't mean that they're always on the wrong track at all. And sometimes they have very good ideas. But one thing I would suggest is that in the event that a resident wants to have a tree removed, there is an explanation given for it. And the explanation can come from them or from the tree company. In other words, it's not just, we need to remove these 2 spruce trees, and I think there needs to be a legitimate reason given. And that's what I would say. But yeah, no, tree companies, they also have some good ideas sometimes.
Great. And then I guess this is an unrelated question, but just you seem like you might have some good advice in this area, just in terms of realizing the desired efficacy of this, especially in our role, and perhaps helping promote the awareness aspect of it and getting people to follow the processes. Do you have any particular, and this could be a continued conversation, but strategies, ideas on, the best way to get the community engaged and adhering to these kind of.
Yeah, well, one thing I'm worried about sometimes is whether or not people actually are fully apprised of the regulations. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how you would go about that, but I do think from what I can see, talking to homeowners, that they didn't know it was not okay to take down this tree, and then they get walloped by a big fine, and they probably would have reached out if they knew about it. So I don't know if I have any ideas about it, but I do think that it warrants some thought, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Maybe
how do
that's something that
people-
we can, on our end, we can kind of brainstorm about what would be like a great
Yeah.
effective way of getting this information out there, because, we do send emails, but not everybody signed up for the village emails. Not everybody checks it regularly. Not everybody checks their mailbox when you mail the stuff out, and they're not necessarily reading all the correspondence. So we got to figure out,
Not everybody speaks English.
and not
but-
everybody speaks English.
Well,
We
I
have to
was
make
gonna,
sure that
I
we
was gonna
are
Yeah.
say,
translating this
Yeah.
effectively,
Right.
and really communicating this to the public. So we
Right.
really should figure out what would be the best way. And it might not just be one way. It could be something where it takes multiple ways, different media to do it.
Yeah.
But we should see what we can do to cover our bases to get it out to as much of the community as possible.
Can I
Right.
say, can you hear me?
Oh,
Mhm.
yes, Dana,
Dana.
hi, yeah, yeah.
Hi, I know, I go in and out. Um, I'm the trustee here. I don't know if Jeannie, the tree warden, knows that, but I'm the liaison to the board. And, I was just gonna say that communicating all of these various rules to the public is probably our biggest challenge, and we're making new ones every day. But there are a couple things we can do. We can blast it. A lot of people see the web blast, not enough, but there are thousands of people. And we can do in English and Spanish, a reminder of the tree ordinance. And things that should be done, because a lot of people just go and they cut them down. And a lot of times you don't even know, it just happens. And I don't know if people realize anyway. So the other thing is there is at least one Facebook page that is very popular with the Spanish speaking community that Austin Padres Hispanos has, that I think we could talk to them about maybe once in a while, posting in Spanish a message from the village, hey, there's a tree ordinance, and you know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
it's a challenge reaching certain people. And I think we haven't personally put enough thought into how to do that. But the police force has a Spanish speaking Facebook page, but I'm thinking the village needs one too, to be quite honest.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Getting the word out on all this stuff, not just trees, not just, oh, you can't idle there for more than 45 seconds. Oh, there are a lot of these little things that people just don't know. And that's what enforcement's about. But, you can't put the tree back. You know what I mean? You can't put that, I have a tree I need you to come look at actually, but I have a tree that may have to go, but I'm not just going to bring it down. I want somebody to come in and tell me, is this tree got to come down? Or does it have this fungus, that it may have, sort of thing. But
Well, I
150
have an idea.
Yeah.
I made a Instagram and Facebook page a while back for Austining trees when we first started discussing the tree ordinance. This is probably 2 years old at this point. Maybe we can change that to be more EAC specific related, and we can highlight these different laws that we have, these environmental laws. So we can highlight the tree ordinance, we can highlight the wetlands ordinance, we can start getting
Mhm.
this, and it's one way. I wouldn't say that this should be the primary way, and I know it won't be, but this could just be another avenue that we can go down to get information out, and maybe make something more official for EAC
Yep.
things to get that out to the public just in general. I know we
Oh,
also have
yeah.
the village fair coming up in September, so having a
Yeah,
booth
that's
there.
what they say. I haven't
just
seen any
down in
proof
the
of it
street.
yet, but that's what I hear.
And definitely Earth Day next year can be a great opportunity to also remind people, as we get into the spring of next year, that we have ordinances like this that they should consider. And it's also something I think as a habit, we need to just constantly remind people. It's not just we updated it, here's the information, and then we forget about it. These are things that we constantly have to keep.
Well, here's a great
Getting out
example,
there.
right? The wonderful Italianate blue house on South Highland that had that magnificent, I don't know if it was an oak or what was it, that,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden they had cut it down. And then a week later, they put the house on the market. So I
Yeah.
think they did that
I've seen
because they
that.
didn't want that tree there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because they didn't want people to go, oh my God, that tree, blah, blah, blah. They did not, I can assure you, they got they just did it, right? And this was one of the more significant trees in the village. And it just came down. And there are people who own property who say, it's my property, it's my tree, I can do what I want with it, blah, blah, blah. And,
know-
it's hard to get around that. But, I'm sure that if they had asked an expert, that she would have said, no, leave that tree alone. And then
Maybe
where are you? And then where are you? When the owner wants to cut it down and, the expert is like, the tree's fine. That was 100 and something year old tree.
Right, well, they get, so they
You know what tree I'm talking about?
I don't, but that gets
I
to
do.
what, I've seen that before
The
though,
big
but,
stump there. You can't miss it.
right. But that gets to what I was saying before, and something I think you really need to consider is to what extent you have teeth. Your law has, your ordinance has teeth.
Yeah.
And to what extent the expert, in this case me or somebody else, comes in there and says, that's a great tree, we don't want to take that down. Is that something the building department is going to listen to? I think that's a real question.
Because you are going to run into that if you try and do this the right way. You are going to run into that.
And I have,
And I'm sure you have. And I don't know who wins in that scenario.
I don't
But-
think this is I have a suggestion that might help a little bit to change the attitude. Maybe we also not just make the conversation about the ordinance, but the importance of trees.
Yeah,
And
the
maybe
importance
we
of
can
trees.
enlist-
Right.
We can enlist Green Ossining, the schools, the library,
Yeah.
because having trees is actually an environmental justice issue. And
Mhm.
as it gets hotter and hotter, there's some parts of this village that have very little tree cover. And as people cut it down, I can tell you just walking around my neighborhood exactly where the trees are because on a hot day. And
I know, I think that's a really good point, and to teach about the benefits of trees is probably equally important. And some other towns have been having some good success with that, like Newburgh or Mount Vernon, or, you could look into what they're doing.
We should have you come speak to a work session, and
Sure.
are you on retainer from the town and village, or how's it work?
On retainer.
Are
I
you-
work when I'm called upon by the village.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So, okay.
So I'm happy to come and speak to whoever you would like me to speak to at any time. Just let me know.
Well, I
I-
think if you're talking about putting teeth in an ordinance and all that stuff, I think if we went in front of the board with a plan of awareness, and because we have these, we have these various programs of planting trees and like in Nelson Park but the thing we have to do is make homeowners who have these trees aware that you can't just cut them down. You shouldn't necessarily just cut them down without thinking about it, at least.
Right.
To a lot of people, trees are not meaningful. So you have to
Right.
change that perception. They're nuisances, they're dangers, they're gonna fall on me.
Well, Dana, I think this would be a great opportunity for us to look at some perhaps DEC grants to do public education awareness programs.
Yeah,
I think this
yeah.
could be a really great way of getting some public outreach and education things started and moving along those lines.
And
yeah.
I'm gonna have to get off, but I
Yes.
just want to mention something when you talk about environmental justice. I happen to be on the board of the New York State Urban Forestry Council, and we have a grant program for K through 12 schools in environmental justice areas that grants them money to plant a tree and also a mentor to help teach them about the benefits of trees. And this is something that you guys might want to look into for your schools. It's a great program, and if you want further information from me, I can give it to you.
That would be
That'd be great.
wonderful.
Okay.
That would be really great.
Because,
Thank
you know,
you
it's great.
so much for
Okay.
coming tonight.
Okay, anytime,
thank
just,
you.
Thanks.
drop me a line if you'd like
Okay.
anything else from me.
Great.
Okay, thank you
We'll
so
be in
much.
Thank you.
touch. Thank you
Okay,
so much,
thank you.
Jean.
Thank you.
you.
Yeah.
If we still have time, I had a little bit of more wordsmithing.
Sure. I just want to throw in a couple thoughts on the awareness thing before we pivot.
Mhm.
I don't know how much effort or, it's worth to try and engage the tree companies really directly and firmly about the rules and laws, but, kind of striking
Yeah.
fear on that side of it might, maybe, I don't know. But maybe that's a question for Jean. She'd probably say they'll laugh at you. But then I don't know, like our little signs or our big welcome to Austining sign, like Washini Park, the big thing, you could put a little notice in the letters there, new tree ordinance, check it out. I don't know. Anyway,
Well, I think it's a
I'll,
matter
I'll-
of, I don't know, I think if people understood more, but trees, their roots, they get in the way, blah, 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 and not everybody appreciates them. And I think one thing we have to think about as we're far away from this, but as we move forward with the DRI Market Square revitalization, redoing, that I want us to think about getting some trees in there that are indigenous and shading, right?
Mhm.
And there's this thing I was reading called microforests that are becoming, I think they're just areas of trees, in the middle of it, but something to break the heat down there and all of that concrete and all that paving. And I really
Yeah.
hope that we can do something that's less pavement intensive, but then you get into maintenance and whatever. But I just think it'd be so awesome to have some trees down
Absolutely.
that people
Plus-
can lay under and be cool under. We have a tree that we love to just sit under, and it's just great,
So trees increase property value. They increase
Well,
the perception of an area as being a great place to live. I mean, that's one way we can sell this idea, that it really has,
yeah.
it actually has financial benefits.
Yeah, I mean,
But then
I mean,
in my neighborhood, there are two properties are completely dominated by these soaring skinny evergreens. And I have 3 of them on my property, but they're literally towering over the houses, taking up the entire little bit of front yard, completely dominant. They seem kind of sickly and like if you wanted to cut those down, what process would you have to go through? And who's to come in and say to somebody, sorry, you're gonna have to leave this tree here, even though it is blocking all the light and dying and but it gets into that. But
Well, I think that was where we were trying to cover that with the tree bank.
yeah,
So
you could do the
Yeah.
tree bank, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Which I
also,
think, yeah.
back to what I was trying to wordsmith, that it just so happens that's the section that outlines the criteria for making the decision. So there's a lot of criteria, and they include the effects on the health, safety, or general welfare of the residents, the physical condition, the effective disturbance, and the next paragraph, I can't figure out what we're trying to say there. But it basically, it's not just a yes, take it down, and no, it's like make your case. And if it, like the situation you're talking about, Dana, it sounds like those are probably not significant trees. They're probably the wrong tree for the place it's in
Yeah.
and overgrown. So making that case, it probably would be an easy decision to take it down. And then if it's of a, it appears to be of significant size, then you will be asked to replace the trees. So you could replace them with a tree that's more appropriate for that kind of house.
How much do trees cost? I guess it depends on how big it is, but
Yeah, you're not required to put in another one that's got, 12-inch diameter. I think it's, if I remember, it's like in aggregate, so you can put a couple of little ones. At our house, my husband, who is trying to kind of urban forestize our property, put a pecan tree 15 feet from the front of the house, but he didn't realize how fast it grew. And at a certain point, it was already like, I think 5 years after he planted, it was already like 40 feet tall.
wow.
So, but the diameter was not large enough to require a tree permit. So he took it down and he planted little tiny 2 small cherry trees that will never get over 8 feet tall. So,
Well, the diameter now might require a permit because we're going to 6 inches rather than 10.
exactly, so it's a good thing he got it out in time, yes. But,
I love the idea of urban forests,
Yeah.
and doing more to promote that. And,
Mhm.
if we could ever get to a place, some of these cities in other countries where it's just like, the streets, the middle dividers, it's on top of anything with a flat roof, is greened, which all of that does, have all those other benefits that we're talking about, cooling the air, cleaning up the air, making it more breathable, all of that stuff. So that'd be great if we were able to do
before we
something.
sign off, could I bring up my other wordsmithing, because I think
Yes.
we have a paragraph that I can't figure out what it means.
Okay.
So this is back to that paragraph G, determination by approval authority.
Mhm.
Can anybody figure out? Or I could show, if I could share my screen, I could show it to you.
You should be able to share your screen as a panelist.
Excellent, thank you. Here we go. Share. All right. Do you see my markup?
Mhm. Yes.
All right. So as the top of this paragraph says, determination by approval authority in making its determination to grant with conditions or deny a tree removal permit under this chapter. The factors to be considered by the approval authority shall include, but shall not necessarily be limited to, the following. So I'd already brought up that on item 2, we can go over the whole thing, but I'll just mention my quibble. Item 2, we talked about moving this species size and health to immediately after the physical condition, because those 2 words go together. It's
Yeah.
3 that I can't quite figure out. The effect of disturbance on the existing trees by accepted forest management practices, including the effect on ecological systems, erosion and sedimentation potential, and the relationship to the surrounding vegetation habitat. It's that phrase, by accepted forest management practices, that I can't figure out how it modifies the first part. I don't know. Kate, do you know? Or maybe somebody was taking this off a boilerplate and copied something in that didn't belong there? Because as you go down the others, they're talking about the effect of disturbance on historical context, on utility placement, but accepted forest management practice sounds like a good thing. But I'm not sure what it's doing there.
Well, I mean, maybe the implication is partially that this is only, it would be relevant like in a granting permit scenario. In the instance that the actions are all being undertaken by accepted forest management practices, which is is that I don't know what that, do we have a reference for? We'll probably do in this somewhere, what forest management practices are, what the authority is on that, but was a little murky.
Because honestly, if you take it out, it still makes sense, maybe more sense. The effect of disturbance on the existing trees, including the effect on ecological systems erosion. But I'm not the expert on this. I'm just grammarizing this.
Mhm. I couldn't tell you whether it would be better to remove it or not. Um,
Could you tell me
Yeah.
how by accepted forest management practices actually modifies the effect of disturbance on the existing trees?
Well, it's specifically talking about it, the way that's placed means that this is all talking about those practices. So any accepted forest management practices that are being undertaken on the spot, disturbances that are a result of that. So I guess it's exclusionary of non-accepted practices, in the strictest reading of this is how I would interpret it. So, maybe that made hopefully that made some sense, but
It just seems that by might be the wrong, what is it, preposition,
the
conjunction, whatever.
effect of disturbance on the trees. on the existing trees. As a result of, I guess is more of like the way I read it is, yeah.
Do we
If
know
it
who-
helps, sorry, if it helps, my logic while drafting this section was pretty much exactly what Nick said. But I also agree that it doesn't have to be totally necessary to include that wording. Like if you think that it just adds a couple extra words that make it a little bit more unclear and clarifying it would be taking out those words, I'm all for it because I can't remember the exact reason why I included that outside of what
Mhm.
Nick just said.
Maybe instead of by, it's through accepted forest management practices or something. But I don't know if the intention might, if that's like a key part of what is trying to be communicated through this or not. Which, yes.
As I'm reading it, like we're trying to say, when you cut these trees down, what's it gonna do to the rest of the trees? What will it do to the ecological systems, erosion and sedimentation?
Yeah.
I think
I
it'll be
mean,
clearer without it or restated.
I guess it's sort of connected to the idea that this is part of the way that the work needs to be done for it to be, permitted activities, right? Because we're talking about, hold on a sec. I'm just looking through the other document for other references to forest management activities. But or the only other spot where we talk about that is activities permitted without tree removal permit. And that is forest management activities on properties under subsection of the real property tax law. Yeah,
One of the reasons I'm sort of jumping on this is sometimes when you have an extremely ambiguous language, that's where you get people trying to crawl in through the cracks. And it's better to be very clear about what the intention is. So if Danielle feels like it would work without it, maybe we take it out there, and if we need to talk about accepted forest management practices, maybe we find a place where that's highlighted on its own.
well, yeah, we do reference it again in the document in another section, but it doesn't really have a definitional basis.
Right, we don't say what it is.
Right.
Well, you know what they say, when in doubt, leave it out.
I would, and that's my only two quibbles.
I would be
Wordsmithing.
fine with removing that because I honestly, like, I'm looking at it and I think it would still get the point across even without it. So if everyone else feels it, taking it out is the better option, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I guess it's reinforcing that, you should be using good practices, right? Is the idea, in the determination of the granting or not granting of a permit that, the effects of these things on the surrounding environment will be judged primarily first on the basis that you're using correct practices in the first place, and therefore the effects being negative or degrading, as a result, is maybe, acceptable if it's through the course or use of acceptable forest management practices, but otherwise, that's a non-starter if you're not. But yeah, I get what you're saying, Katie and Kate. So I'm not like particularly, passionate on this front, but it seems like there might be a certain thread of decent rationale there that if we wanted to be more explicit about what the accepted practices were that we're referring to, we could go that route too. But yeah, I mean, we could just also take it out so as not to leave ambiguity.
Maybe clear without it.
All
I
right.
defer to you all.
And if we want to emphasize following accepted forest management practices, maybe there's a standalone item that says follow accepted forest management practices.
Yeah, the basis for any approval is going to be founded upon, the following or operating under blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hopefully that should go without saying that we're following
Well,
the appropriate practices.
you don't make these on faith, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Other than that was my only markup. The rest of it looks great.
awesome, great. So I'm gonna type up the recommendations that Jean gave us tonight. And we can go back and forth and we can see how we feel about making some of these changes, but I think like some of the suggestions that she gave us to consider on the wording, how much we really want to consider with invasive species and the permitting process. I think a lot of it was some really good suggestions, and the suggestions on stumps and how we handle that. I think is stuff that we can update to, and I think the suggestions of it being site specific really is good to consider. So considering it is the holiday week as well, it might take me a couple of days. But I'll definitely get the typed up notes to everyone within the next week, and then we can move forward. I believe we are off for the month of August. Katie, can you just stop sharing your screen for a sec? Or
Sorry,
for the rest of the meeting?
we finished the whole point.
There we go. I can see you now. This is much better. Yeah, so I'll get everything typed up. I'll send it out to everyone. We'll give it a quick look over, make sure if there's anything I'm leaving out. If something you might want to, if I missed something that Jean had mentioned. But as I was saying, I believe we're off for August, and the next time we would meet is in September. In the meantime, since we don't have a meeting, is that something that we're going to table until September, or is this stuff that we want to try to push through during this time? I would think September would probably be where we would be with the Board of Trustees. Dana, would that make sense to you?
It's hard to get anything done at this time of year.
Yeah.
Frankly, I mean, the mayor's been out of town for 2 weeks, so, I don't know. It depends on what you want to do.
Well, I think it's more that when the time comes and we're getting more toward the final stages before it goes, I guess, before public review, we would want to present this to the Board of Trustees. So yeah, I guess it's more that I want to make sure that.
Well, the thing is, though, if you want to do that before September, you're gonna have a special meeting.
Okay, oh, no, that's, yeah, I think that's where I
the
was wanting to
EAC, I mean.
clarify.
I just,
Realistically, this would be able to go in front of the board for discussion, or I guess consideration for moving forward. So we
I
can
don't-
email and figure this all out.
depends on how quickly we come up with something to present to them,
Okay, all
That's all.
right.
If you
Whether
want,
it's an awareness campaign, whether it's a grant, whether it's the
Okay,
ordinance, I don't know. It has to be kind of focused, though.
okay. We'll also follow up with Maddie as well to see what we can grant wise, what is out there as well. Danielle, you were about to
yeah,
say something.
sorry.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, because I typed up the notes as well, but I do want to compare to what you have. So I guess when you send your notes, if you want, I can revise the ordinance a little bit and then send it back to you guys. And instead
Okay.
of meeting about it before September, maybe we can just put it on like a Google Doc or something shared, where everybody can leave like comments, kind of like how Katie did in hers with the comments and revisions, and then I guess go from there. If you think that's a good option.
I think that's a great option, and that will
Great
help keep this moving forward, even though this is kind of like a dead period
Yeah.
of getting things done. This will at least help us move forward at least until September, and when we actually can get this in front of the board for a discussion and review.
And with respect to what Dana said about what pieces could go first, I would think the ordinance, because the ordinance is just about wrapped and ready.
Mhm.
And then we can start looking at how to get it in front of people's, how to
Yeah.
change the culture about trees.
Well, in the meantime, just before we go, I'll let you know that I updated the Austining Trees thing to say Village of Austining Environmental Advisory Council, and we can start like putting information out there just in general. And I'll share the links with everybody and we can update the admin thing so that people have access to it. So we can at least get started in that direction and let people know that, you know, we exist.
Yes.
Sounds
All right,
good.
I don't have any other comments or questions. Does anybody else have anything else that, before we go? All right, well, wonderful. So this is, we're gonna adjourn the meeting for the Environmental Advisory Council for July 2nd. Have a wonderful holiday week and we'll be in touch during, the next couple of months and I will see everyone in September.
Thank
a
you.
wonderful
Thanks,
summer.
Kate.
All right,
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Have a good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Good night.